You're listening to Greater Good Radio Hawaii. Please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. Today's guest is Rick Blangiardi, Senior Vice President and General Manager of KGMB Channel 9.
It's interesting that you mentioned that comment on doing the right things or doing what's right, because I know especially recently you've gone through, some trying times, and it always seems to be doing the right thing. What's right is hard. Yeah. Much harder than, doing the other. And later on, you can take a look back and say, well, that was right. But, how do you get the internal fortitude to be able to do that?
Well, that's why, actually, I think after I said what I said a few months ago, I said about having the courage to do the right thing. It really is about that. And you're right, Evan. I mean, a lot of times when that situation presents itself, look, what happened at KHON, we could have turned our backs on everyone and said, well, look, it's our job, so, we're going to just have to do what these new owners want to do. At the end of the day, aside from how offensive I found that to be, given their premise, it was the antithesis of the right thing. It was the wrong thing to do, and I didn't want to be forced to do the wrong thing under any circumstance. So, it's about values and principles, and the old line about character, and is that what you kind of do when nobody's watching, and so clearly, along with my thoughts and the challenge that was there, knowing that we worked so hard for the last 3.5 years to kind of bring the stations back, and the teams that we built and the performance that we were experiencing together, and just it was to get the morale and everything else all teed up in the right place, where I really believed deep in my heart that we were making a difference and making a really solid contribution to the people of the state of Hawaii, and that we were also very committed to that, and people were really enjoying it, as they should, and all of that great stuff. I, at the end of the day, was unable to convince this ownership to do things differently based on what they came in and said they wanted to do from day one. And at the end of it, it really boiled down to my inability to prevent them, and my being left to say, well, then if you're going to do that, no matter what I say, then it starts with me. And I wasn't looking to be a hero. I wasn't looking to leave KHON 2. I didn't want to do that. But somebody once told me, in fact, it was Larry Price, and I'm paraphrasing, and again, it may seem like a cliche because I've read this somewhere, but he said, the purpose of all education, the reason why we get smart, if you will, is to do the things that we have to do at the time that we have to do them, whether or not we want to do them. And this brought me to that crossroads. I knew what I had to do, even though I didn't want to do it. And then it's just a question of having the courage to do so. And I must tell you, it wasn't about me. And I really, before I left, I talked to all of my managers and a lot of excellent people there who were really good broadcasters and good leaders who really deserved to be in that building, who had paid their dues, who had families to feed and a lot of other issues, and to stay. That, and that maybe, just maybe, my leaving might do. I had no idea, nor would I ever indulge myself, that 8 of the 9 department heads would leave the next week. I just never thought that, they would, because I was going. And it didn't go because I went. And I was proud of them for saying it. They went because we had created a shared belief system on how we operated, how we led the men and women who worked in that television station at KHON, and what we were doing collectively as broadcasters and what our commitment was. And, for me, it was an incredible validation of just how much we were sharing together and why the performance was as good. So, yes, it was sad. It was really unnecessary. It was tragic. It should not have happened in this town, for this state. It was wrong, and I'll say that forever, and I don't care what the corporate repercussions might be. But at the end of the day, it ended in a way that I could not have been any prouder of the men and women who made the decision to say, I won't do that either.
I think that answers why people are loyal. Another thing I'm trying to figure out is, how are you managing your time? Because as we're looking at the bio, there's a ton of nonprofit boards. There's for-profit boards. You were running 2 stations at one time.
Yeah.
How do you keep it all together?
Well, thank you. Well, it's been hard. I'll be honest with you. The 2 stations, as challenging as it was, I always felt guilty because there was never enough time in the day. And I could go to KGMB at 7:30 in the morning and be there till like noon or 1 o'clock. and then leave. Everybody go like, "Where are you going?" It's like the half day, and then walk in the KHON. Have been like, "Where have you been all day?" That was hard in itself, created its own angst. But learn to balance that. And the days were longer, obviously, because of the nature of television. The boards were really, I determined that I was going to limit it to 3 boards when I came home, and if possible, a corporate board, because I felt I'd grown up enough to be on one. And so I was careful to see. I inherited the food bank because it was the legacy of KGMB 9, and it does such an incredible job of feeding Hawaii's needy, and in all levels of people. And it's really a privilege, and I think the food bank does a wonderful job. I was fortunate enough to be asked to be on the Chamber of Commerce, and I felt if I'm going to be about the business of business and the business of change, that I ought to maybe perhaps be in a place where I'm certainly aware and alert and being taught and maybe making a contribution about what's happening in commerce in Hawaii. Without slighting anyone or anything, the Aloha Council of Boy Scouts is one of those things you just don't say no to. An opportunity to help young people at any level, if you can help. And trying to use the power of the television stations was great. And I know you said the Honolulu Boy Choir. I haven't been all that involved with that. I tried to help them what little I could. I think that's going through its own growth process. But clearly being on the board at CPB was a big opportunity.
At what point of your career were you able to get involved in these nonprofit organizations and trying to still have the eye to move up in the organization?
Well, when I was a lot younger and I had different responsibilities, I was probably involved with one. Boys and Girls Club of Hawaii, Board of Multiple Sclerosis. As you get older and you're into more senior management positions, and also wanting to extend the potential benefit, if you will, of the television station and its resources, its news division and other things that we can do with the power of the medium to those other boards, it's part of what you give back. And this part of my life, so much of what I've been about has been trying to give back, to come home to Hawaii now and really make a contribution and do something that would be worthwhile.
Thanks for joining us today on Greater Good Radio. For more information or a transcript of today's show, please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. This is your host, Evan Leong and Carrie Leong, saying please join us next time for another episode of Greater Good Radio Hawaii.